Greetings, Poke people. Ichigo90 here. A little while ago, I started my first ever Nuzlocke. It was in Pokemon Fire Red, and I finished it a few weeks ago. About a month ago as of the recording of this video. So for those of you who don't feel like watching a 15 episode series about 30 minutes apiece, here's a little summary of how that went. It started off just like any other Pokemon game. I picked the best starter ever, that of course being Charmander. And I decided I was going to be clever with the nickname and called it Zippo. After that, the rival did the smart thing and picked the starter that was strong against mine, and we immediately got launched into a battle. I called my rival because I am just so clever. And rival immediately proceeded to ignore Professor Oak's advice and not attack me. He stood over there wagging his tail as Zippo scratched his little claws all the way down, taking out this turtle that is also a squirrel. Naturally, that meant we won our first ever battle and got to proceed. We did. Yes, he said he picked the wrong Pokemon, but in reality, he just made the wrong choice. Anyway, after getting our Pokeballs, we ran into a Pidgey on our way to Pewter City, which proceeded to break out of all 5 of my Pokeballs, meaning we missed our first encounter. Our second encounter, however, was a Rattata that I named Crisp Rat, which we immediately lost in the process of catching a Pikachu, which I then proceeded to name Zapsqueak. Against Brock, Zippo went in, had Metal Claw, and swept Brock's team no problem whatsoever. We got the Boulder badge, and knowing that the next badge was Water, I trained up Zapsqueak, who then proceeded to faint. No problem, I picked up a Pseudosky and a Zubat shortly thereafter. We called the Zubat Dracula, picked up the Helix fossil, and then caught a Spearow, which I then named Brittany, because what else would you name a Spearow? Against rival number 2, we had an even easier time, with all of his Pokemon going down one after another, not losing anyone. Across the bridge, we picked up an Abra, which I named Hocus Pocus. Shortly after, I picked up a Weedle. I was really hoping for a grass type, but we have to take what we can get. I called the Weedle Wasp and proceeded to take on Misty. She led off with Staryu as usual. Dracula had evolved by this point and handled the Staryu quite easily. Against the Starmie, however, we had to bring in Pseudosky. We caught a Meowth heading south of the city towards Vermilion. Anyway, we decided to pick up a Dugtrio. Well, we didn't decide to pick up a Dugtrio. We decided to pick up a Diglett, but ended up running into a Dugtrio, who proceeded to kill both Wasp and Brittany before we brought in Pseudosky to lower its attack a little bit, and then it immediately stayed in the ball. Yeah. So we called it Chicken Nugget, headed into the next route, and picked up a Drowsy. Psychic types are actually pretty good in this game, and we called the Drowsy Baku. So after that, we went onto the ship and ran into rival number 3 and proceeded to take out his entire team without losing anyone. Against Lieutenant Surge, we handled him quite nicely. This is also about the point where I became a VTuber, so I toyed around with my format a little bit. We picked up a Voltor before heading into the rock tunnel and called it Billiard. Once we got through the rock tunnel, we immediately headed into Cerulean City, Celadon, whatever, and rushed the rocket hideout. There was a scary moment against Giovanni where he very nearly killed Chicken Nugget. And you can see here I was kind of shocked by that. I wasn't expecting it. So I switched out the Pseudo Sky to Dragon Rage, and then almost lost Pseudo Sky as well. This not being a hardcore Nuzlocke, I of course healed up because I wanted to win. Kangaskhan went for a Tail Whip. I went for another Dragon Rage. And Mega Punch did a lot of damage. But Water Pulse almost took out the Kangaskhan. It then hit itself in confusion, securing me the win against Giovanni because his final Pokemon, Rhyhorn, had nothing for Pseudo Sky. That was a scary battle, but we came out alright. Against Erica, we had a much easier time. I led off with Zippo, and Zippo swept her team. One after another, her Pokemon fell. They were just no match for Zippo. And against the next rival number 4, he again led off with Pidgeotto. We led off with Billiard and took out his entire team before running into a Ghastly. We threw a Great Ball at it. And called it Marowak. Yes, I know I misspelled it. That's completely irrelevant. You understand what it means. Anyway, we rescued Mr. Fuji and ran into a Snorlax. We, of course, caught the Snorlax in a Great Ball. Boom. We called the Snorlax Fat Cat, and immediately went on to Cycling Road, where we lost both Baku to poison, and then Chicken Nugget to poison. Yeah, that one really sucked because Koga's gym was up next. And it would have been really nice to have that extra psychic and ground type to deal with his team. But Hocus Pocus went in alone and tore through the gym without too much difficulty. His Pokemon simply did not stand a chance against the might of Hocus Pocus. However, what did stand a chance... Yes, we found Zapsqueak 2 in the, Can you tell I don't script my videos? We found Zapsqueak 2 in the power plant. We also, however, found an electrode in the power plant. It would not let me escape, missed its rollout, and when I tried to be cheeky and teleport away, it self-destructed. I was not particularly happy about this. I'm still not. Anyway, it was time for rival number 5. He, of course, led off with his Pidgeot, as he always does, and we led off with Fat Cat, and then proceeded to tear through his entire team, despite his best efforts to stop me, I guess, is what this was. Well, his Blastoise did prove to be a bit more of a problem than the other Pokemon, with Pseudo-Sky doing barely anything to it. However, Fat Cat did a much better job. I still don't know what type Fat Cat's hidden power is. But, as you can see, we didn't lose a single Mon against him, which meant it was time for the next Giovanni fight. We of course led off with Pseudo-Sky, because Giovanni's the ground-type specialist. Except that most of his team is still not ground-type at this point, but that didn't matter. We defeated Boss Giovanni and made our way to Sabrina, the easiest gym of this entire game, in my honest opinion. She specializes in psychic types, so we led off against Fat Cat, who knew Shadow Ball, and took out all of her Pokemon in one shot, including the Venomoth that she just randomly has for some reason. So on our way to the next gym, we picked up a Shelder, which we then proceeded to name Clamu. When we got into the Pokemon Mansion, we decided to, lead off with Zapsqueak, let him get a little bit more glory in building up the team. But when we tried to lower its HP before throwing a ball, it self-destructed. I am still not over that. So, we had no choice but to go through the rest of the mansion without Zapsqueak 2. And Zapsqueak 3 would not be forthcoming. In addition to that, this random Raticate used Pursuit and killed Clamu. That was going to be my answer to Arcanine. So we went against Blaine with the might of Pseudo-Sky. Keep in mind that while Gyarados has very high attack and Waterfall is a physical move in today's Pokemon games, back in Gen 3 the physical special split had not yet happened. So I was relying on Surf, which Arcanine survived and did honestly not much. So, after a back and forth, I eventually Water Pulsed, which kept Arcanine out of heal range, and Surf was able to take it out. Okay. So we got the Volcano badge. That's 7 of the 8 badges so far. But then we had to take a detour through the Sevi Islands, which honestly did not take all that long. We beat up a biker gang, found Mostel, saved her from a really weird hypno, helped her go back to her dad, and I really need to do a better job of editing these videos. Anyway, we gave her dad a rock. We got a moonstone in exchange, which we were not going to use. Made our way back to Kanto. Bill offered to let us go back whenever we wanted, but we were not ever going to do that, and instead made our way to Giovanni one last time. Giovanni's team this time did not have the scary Kangaskhan. Instead, he led off with Rhyhorn, which Pseudo Sky proceeded to take out in a single surf. We also managed to defeat the rest of his team without losing a single member. Honestly, we didn't lose anybody in any important battles up until this point, which naturally had me feeling pretty good about myself going into rival number 6. He, of course, led off with his Pidgeot. We, of course, led off with Billiard. Despite a pretty close call with Billiard, if that would have crit, we probably would have lost. We did a pretty good job of taking out the rest of his team. He shifted into Rhyhorn after we took out Pidgeot, which, just like Giovanni's, fell to a single surf. Up next was his Growlithe, which, you guessed it, fell to a single surf.
It's 19 hours.
We shifted into Zippo for his next Pokemon, the Execute, which did not stand much of a chance against Flamethrower. There you go. That crit did not matter. So we shifted back to Pseudo Sky for the Blastoise. Honestly, Pseudo Sky was the only Pokemon I had that resisted Blastoise's best moves. But Blastoise is kind of bulky, and Pseudo Sky's special attack is not that great. Anyway, we eventually shifted back to Fat Cat to finish the job, and Strength took it out. That left his Alakazam, which, much like Sabrina's, did not stand much of a chance against Shadow Ball. As nice as it would be for Gyarados to have access to physical water moves, the fact that Shadow Ball is also physical in this gen really makes the Psychic types not that difficult to deal with. Especially with something like Snorlax, which hits like a truck. Anyway, Lorelei didn't stand much of a chance, falling to Billiard the Electrode one after another. Slowbro managed to survive one spark, but then all it did was set up an Amnesia. She didn't even bother to heal it for some reason, which meant it fell to a second hit. Out comes the Lapras, and we continue to spark. And that crit absolutely mattered. I don't think it would have been a one-shot otherwise. Anyway, we shifted into Fat Cat for Jinx because not a water type. And although Fat Cat does get frozen, it immediately defrosts and hits Jinx with a Shadow Ball, which one-shots. Which led us into the fight with Bruno. He led off with Onyx, and we obviously led off with Pseudo Sky. Onyx, just like all the other ground rock types, fell to surf easily. We switched out to Marowak for Hitmonchan, thinking that this should be pretty easy fighting type. It's can't touch ghost types, but Hitmonchan has Rock Tomb, which is doing a decent amount. We failed to take it out in a second hit, and then our speed was lowered. So we switched out to Billiard, who did manage to tank a Rock Tomb much better than Marowak was doing, and used Spark to take out the Hitmonchan. It survived and hit us with a Sky Uppercut, and then healed. We really needed a paralysis here, but one was not forthcoming. However, Bruno switched out to Onyx for some reason, and so we then switched out to Pseudo Sky and dodged an Earthquake. One surf later, the Onyx was down. The Hitmonchan came back out, and Pseudo Sky stayed in to finish it off with Surf. It, however, survived again, this time in red. However, we were not in danger of losing, and Bruno did not heal it again. So we switched out to Zippo to take on the Machamp. Wing Attack almost KO'd. It did more than half, and Machamp did not attack. So Zippo used Fly, dodged a Scary Face, which wouldn't have done anything anyway, and took out the Machamp. That just left the Hitmonlee, which Zippo stayed in for. And one Wing Attack later, we had defeated Bruno. We were halfway through the Elite Four and had not one single death to show for it. Against Agatha, things would be much easier. We led off with Fat Cat, knowing that Ghost-type moves cannot touch normal-type Pokemon, and Gengar's Double Team meant nothing. It did survive the first Shadow Ball, but not the second. We switched from Snorlax to the Jinx we picked up all the way back in Celadon? Cerulean. All the way back in Cerulean City, named Zinx, to deal with the Golbat for Agatha. Arbok, however, survived an Ice Punch, but not a second one. Fat Cat came back in for the last two ghosts, and immediately decided to take a nap. This was rather annoying. However, we had prepared with Sleep Talk. However, Fat Cat woke up immediately, then fell right back to sleep. This is kind of annoying. Anyway, we went back to using Sleep Talk. We took a critical hit Sludge Bomb, and then Sleep Talk landed on Shadow Ball, which did not take out the Gengar. Kind of annoying. However, we woke up before taking any damage from Nightmare. Sludge Bomb poisoned us and put us a little closer to fainting than I would have liked. However, all that was left was the much weaker Haunter, and knowing how much Shadow Ball had done to the evolved form, we decided to go for it, and then it was time for Birdkeeper Lance. He obviously leads off with his Gyarados. We led off with Zinx. I was expecting that Ice Punch would be able to take it out in one hit, forgetting that water resists ice. However, Lovely Kiss did put it to sleep, which bought us some time. We did less than half. However, a Body Slam did put us in range. Well, a couple of Body Slams and a missed Hyper Beam put us in range for Ice Punch to take out the Gyarados. Aerodactyl seemed like it should be easy, but then it one-shot Zinx and got the Omni Boost from Ancient Power. Zinx was at full health. Anyway, Pseudo Sky came in, and after thinking about it for a minute, I decided to go for Surf. I was really hoping this would be a one-shot, but it was not meant to be. So I switched Pseudo Sky out for Fat Cat, just to get rid of the Rock-type weakness. Aerodactyl continued spamming Ancient Power, and I forgot that Rock resists normal. But then a couple of Shadow Balls should have taken it out, if not for the full restores. Yeah, this Aerodactyl was pretty tough. That Hyper Beam brought us dangerously close, but we survived and managed to get off a rest. On the turn that Aerodactyl recharged, we used Sleep Talk and landed on Shadow Ball. So far, so good. That next Hyper Beam will not kill, even if it does crit. And this time, Sleep Talk lands on Rest. I miscounted the turns for Rest and hit Sleep Talk again, which naturally did nothing. But then went for Shadow Ball, got a crit, and took out the Aerodactyl. Up next was the Dragonite, which I brought in Marowak for, mostly just for the Confuse Ray, which we landed. However, Dragonite did not play along, and Marowak survived on 4 HP. I wasn't quite sure who to bring in next, but I settled on Billiard because the electric type weakness. That first wing attack didn't do much, and the Spark did get a paralysis. Dragonite hit itself in confusion, and I thought I might actually be able to win this. So I used Charge so that the next Spark would do even more damage, and then Billiard got taken out by a Hyper Beam. Fat Cat came in and finished the job. However, it was not as quick as I would have liked, with Dragonite managing to survive, not resisting. Strength, not once, but twice. Sure would be nice if we had a Pokemon with Ice Stab to deal with these dragons. But we took out the Dragonairs. Eventually. Which meant it was time to go up against the champion. We had defeated the Elite Four with 2 deaths. We were going against the champion in what was a 4v6. I was confident we could do it. However, win or lose, this is what it all comes down to. The final match. The opening setup was Pidgeot staring down Fat Cat. It was going for accuracy strats, which it lost. Up next was Alakazam. We had taken a few sand attacks, and we were slower. However, Alakazam has horrific physical defense and fell to 1 single Shadow Ball. For the Executor, we sent in Zippo. And as usual, the palm tree fell. We sent in Fat Cat against the Blastoise. However, it has Hydro Pump now. And although Strength was doing a decent amount, Hydro Pump was doing a lot more. What's worse, Blastoise set up the rain. I was confident that if we got a crit Strength, we might still be able to pull this off. However, Sleep Talk had different plans and landed on Rest. We had another turn of sleep coming, so I pulled out Sleep Talk again, narrowly surviving a Hydro Pump, and got Shadow Ball, which did not crit. My options were pretty limited at this time, so I switched back over to Pseudo Sky. Blastoise used Bite, which we took off pretty well. I used Bite again, hoping for a flinch, and got a Hydro Pump to the face. It's worth noting that Blastoise's special attack is way higher than Pseudo Sky's. So even though we did resist, we also took a lot more damage in return. So I healed up Pseudo Sky, then healed up Fat Cat. Now, just in case we still needed him. However, Blastoise appears to be out of Hydro Pumps at this point. So we managed to confuse the Blastoise, and then it manages to survive hitting itself. And then the rival heals. Well, this was a long, grindy battle that I did not enjoy very much. I went back to using Water Pulse, hoping for more confusion. Blastoise continued to set up the rain, even though it was out of its own water moves. I'm not sure why it did that. But we were faster, so there was no chance of its bite making us flinch. We eventually got the confusion back. And it did hurt itself, although it did very little. A crit Surf, and Blastoise was down. All that was left was the Rhydon, which fell to Surf. And Arcanine. our old pal who survived surf back on Cinnabar Island. It does have extreme speed, which I was concerned about, but there was no reason. The champion did not heal the Arcanine, extreme speed did not crit, and Arcanine fell. The run was over. We won. We endeavored to go do a Nuzlocke, and we succeeded. That was it. We were done. No more battles to be had. No more companions to be found. And it was all thanks to the team that we had built along the way. Fat Cat the Snorlax, Pseudo Sky the Gyarados, Marowak the Haunter, and Zippo the Charizard. These 4 Pokemon survived the Nuzlocke. Of course, Billiard the Electrode and Zinx the Jinx played their role, but it was these 4 who walked away. And my first ever Nuzlocke ended in success.